Hello and welcome everyone. So how did my game Amira reach its final form after 6 different iterations, and what are the lessons that I have learned throughout these iterations, throughout these 4 years of development? Spoiler alert, it didn't reach its final form and it's already in its 7th iteration. But of course, like throughout this video, you will hear me speaking a lot as if it's 6 different times, but that's because while I was making this video, Amira was already in its 6th form and I didn't know it would reach its 7th, so that's a problem. But yeah, throughout this video, you will hear me speaking as if it's 6 different iterations, but they're 7th, and the 7th will be at the end of the video, of course. So what are the lessons that I have learned? Let's see. A little bit of a background first of all. Some of the challenges that I have faced include, but not limited to, a very poor English. Back in 2017, my English was far worse and nowhere to learn. Simply, my English was bad and there weren't nearly enough resources to learn in Arabic. Slow internet, like we're talking about 10 kilobytes of download speed and almost maybe 15 gigabytes of download limits monthly or something like that. Finally, game development being simply so culturally disliked that you'll be treated as if you are doing something wrong when you are learning to develop them. So let's go back, far back until 2017 to the very first iteration of what is now to become Amira. It was named back then as Adventure Project. From the get-go, my idea with what's now known as Amira is creating an emotional, heart-wrenching story about a Middle Eastern girl tackling some challenges born from the world that she was born in. That is not a very forgiving and easy, happy world, to say the least. And for some odd reason, or reasons that I don't really know about, this kind of background is the one that movies like to use for the bad guys. It's weird and I don't know, but it is a rich culture and it's such a shame that it's not really explored like at all, and instead of actually exploring all the unique visuals and behaviors and thoughts of these unique people from different cultures and maybe find value in what they have. But I am me and not a character from a movie, and I am a game developer and I want to make games that show a more proper image where there are good people and there are bad people as well, just like any other part of the world. And I wanted to make a game about a girl and a boy who faces unique challenges that come up in a Middle Eastern fantasy world that I have envisioned, which is like sort of inspired from the real world, but it has differences, like it has magic, monsters and some really cool stuff. In any case, that was a lot of talking about a background, so a little action about the game part. Like, where is the gameplay? What is she doing? Why is she only walking around? Yeah, that was pretty much the first iteration of the action RPG that I am building. It had no combat, it had no action, and it had no RPG elements, so, you know, good stuff. And as you guessed, that was a failure of an iteration, but it was a good learning experience. I learned, like, I worked really hard to create some interactable system. I familiarized myself with A-star algorithm and DJ Castra. I'm not sure how you pronounce it, I'm sorry about that. But yeah, pathfinding, basically navigation and AI. And I learned basically and improved myself on the tool set that I'm using, which is Unity and C#. So yeah, the first lesson that I learned was I need to actually get good at the tool set that I am using, otherwise I'm not going to be able to build anything. Second iteration, we finally have some gameplay, we have some action. It's capsules. Yes, it's actually just capsules, because back then I couldn't afford assets and I was like in the process of saving a quarter of a Jordanian dinar, which is like 0.35 US dollar every single day, which was my allowance as I was a school kid back then. So yeah, I was saving money so I could buy assets, which are models and stuff that you put in the game. So yeah, that was back then. So until then, like, I had to use capsules and primitive shapes. Wow, that was quite a while ago. Now I guess I am an employee and things are a little bit better. But yeah, back then, capsules all the way. So the second iteration was about moving around, avoiding enemies, shooting at them, killing them, and if they catch you, they have some unique behaviors. They may try to kill you, they may have, like, call their allies, so their allies group up and try to kill you. They have unique behaviors, like rotating in different behaviors, and we look at it from a different perspective. It's more of a stealth-based game, right? But wasn't... Yeah, it is actually. This is the second iteration. It was sort of a stealth-based game, like that was how it was going to be built. But of course, like, Amira now is working towards being an action RPG. So yeah, I mean, hear me out, guys. I definitely did not know what I was doing back then, and the second thing is, my goal was to create an emotional, heart-wrenching experience, not an action RPG. It just happened to be an action RPG. And if we're being honest, the time between the first iteration and the second iteration isn't really that long, to be fair. So simply, I didn't have the skill set to bring my ideas into life, whether it was a stealth game or a stealth-based game or an action RPG. So lessons learned about this iteration: I learned to make the game somewhat prettier. Otherwise, no matter how good the AI is, it really doesn't matter, because the game will still get poor ratings and all of that good stuff. And actually, this iteration of the game, I think it was a part of the a game jam. I'm not really sure, I remember at this point, but yeah, I think it was. So yeah, like, at least, like, in the standards, like, and the skill set that I had back then, I'm pretty proud of how the game turned out, at least in terms of the AI. So, third iteration. Instead of adding action, I decided to add a bigger environment and add more stealth, of course. Like, how else would you make an action RPG game? You would add a lot of stealth. Of course, I'm being a little bit sarcastic. So the third iteration of the game went under the name of Dalia. So I spent a large chunk of time, maybe 2 years of development on this one, like from 2017 to 2019. In here, the game was slowly maturing into a hack and slash RPG game similar to Diablo, at least in terms of the perspective. Basically, think Diablo with stealth, poor controls, and unbalanced abilities. That was the game I made. Sounds fun, right? Oh yeah, and the main character of the game wasn't called Amira, it was called Dalia back then. Of course, like, each name has, at least, like, starting from Dalia, each name has a unique meaning, but we could go through that later. For now, we are focusing on the prototype. So for those who actually played the prototype, you will find yourself asking, where is Dalia? Like, you are already looking at the screen. So Dalia is a female name, and you sort of play as an old man. Wait, so you play as an old man and Dalia is a female. Something doesn't feel right. So here is the thing. The game was supposed to be pretty long, and it was overscoped, as you can imagine. So at the very start of the game, you play as her father, who helps, like, with the process of her being born. But here is the thing, the prototype ended. Like, the very final mission of the prototype is the mission where she is born. So the game literally ended the moment Dalia was born, so that was not good. Like, of course, I intended to make it a proper lengthy game with all of these levels, but I simply couldn't. Because, like, yeah, it was 2019, I think, and we had, like, I gathered some feedback and some stuff, and I just figured out that the game was not working at all gameplay-wise, so I closed everything, and so, like, I closed everything and started a new project. But of course, I learned a lot of things, so many things. I learned so many things about building advanced AI systems, and the fact that I have to take care about the visuals and create an art direction rather than whatever it was that I was doing, which was just throwing whatever assets I could afford, which wasn't a lot. It was like 2 or 3 packs from 3D Forge. Yeah. And you could see like I mashed low poly models with highly detailed textures on terrain. So yeah, I learned the hard way that I needed a good art direction. But to be fair, even the story back then was quite different from what we have today, but the core was the same. I wanted to explore story-driven games that speak about some unique challenges that we have faced in our lives and cultures. You know, games inspired by serious games inspired by our lives that we live in. It's a rich culture that we are in, and so it's a shame that it's not explored at all. So as a game developer, I want to explore it, at least in terms of game settings. And if I am being honest, like even if Dalia was a big failure, I still really liked how it panned out. It still failed. It received some of the harshest feedbacks I received until this day. And I was at a splitting point, like should I just quit game development or should I just continue? But yeah, I learned a lot, most importantly. So, to summarize, lessons learned about this iteration: gather feedback early to improve the gameplay and the feel of the game, but do not change the vision of the game. You need to make the game feel good, even if it has acceptable visuals, it won't matter. That's the core lesson that I learned. And the secondary lesson, which was more of a bonus objective, like I learned now that I look back on Dalia, but I didn't learn back then, which is the art direction. You need an art direction. You can't just put assets and expect things to look good. So sadly, things didn't continue really well, and my decision was to give up on game development. Point. So here is the thing. I did actually, in fact, quit for a while, but I found out that I simply enjoyed making games quite a bit and playing games. And I thought to myself, I have 2 routes. I could either focus on the university and finish earlier than I would have finished, or simply take it easy, take it slower after I take a small break, and use whatever time I could squeeze into game development. And as you can guess, what I did was suffer from that big burnout, which was like a semester or something. So I took it easy for 1 semester. And then I went through my savings and bought a bunch of assets on sale, which kickstarted Amira, and here I am. I continued and pushed through, and so yes, that's how it ended. I simply took a break and bought a few assets. So now Amira and Their Honor was born, and that's what the game was called back then. So in early 2020, Amira and Their Honor was born, and it's the game that I'm currently building. So from 2020 until today, it's been, early 2020, late 2019, it's sort of 3 to 4 years. Amira basically had, she wanted to protect her family, or the land of her family, from occupiers, or in this case, monsters, until one day she realized that her life is pre-written for her, and thus begins her fight of wanting to write her own life with her own hands, while keeping her morals and values, and on top of it, while protecting the lands of her family and trying not to be killed by monsters. So, or actually not monsters, like in game they look like monsters, but they're in fact human occupiers, if that makes sense. But I give them the visuals of monsters. So from day one, that was it, and it never changed. Now this is a very different story from the first game. Yes, it is actually, but the core principles that I built upon, they are still the same. And this is why I I treat it as one large project, and I kept building upon it until it's in this form. and it's about writing your own life and not allowing the community or culture or even oppressors and occupiers or anyone to write your own life. And if we're being honest, it's just a human nature problem. I mean, I'm certain everyone in all cultures, they must have faced this problem one way or another, where they feel like their life is pre-written for them and they have to obey the normal standards of the culture that they are born in, and they need to do certain things. And in the game, I am expressing it in terms of Middle Eastern fantasy setting with some unique settings like magic and weapons and abilities and whatnot. So the fourth iteration of Amira, where it was called Amira and Their Honor. First it was low poly 2D game type of thing, then it became a 2.5D platformer, and the third and then it moved on to become, well, to be fair, I thought it was fun back then, but according to the feedback, it was nowhere near acceptable levels for the types of enemies and the combat encounters that I am building. 2.5D was simply not good enough. It was too restrictive for me, and it really did not suit my taste. And so Amira was yet the lessons that I learned in this iteration. Do not restrict the game. Let it evolve as you see fit. And when you try to modify and build upon the game, you will find certain things that work and things that do not work. And you'll say, what if I change this? What if I make this modification? It might feel better, it might feel worse. When you get these emotions, I'd say just give it a try, throw a quick prototype and see where the game takes you. And then that was still not good enough for me, so Amira was reborn yet again as the fifth iteration under the name of simply Amira. And it was back then a top-down game with a static view, like static camera stuck to from a top-down view, and you'll see a major shift in visuals. I was still at low poly, but different style of low poly, I guess. And to be fair, I still like this model to this day of Amira, but I just failed to make it look good whatever I did for some odd reason. Like, I just couldn't get that model to look good in the engine at all. But for the good part, Amira is now stable. No changes to the story. It is a straightforward line of finding out which type of game tells the story in the best possible format. I kept improving on the combat, adding more monsters with different behaviors, adding environments, adding destructible environments as well, weapons, special abilities, and things just kept moving forward really nicely. But there was one slight problem. The game had no visual identity. It simply looked subpar, and it was easily forgettable. And the combat was still somewhat restrictive. Don't get me wrong, it was far better than anything I had previously, but it's not what I was looking for. Like, at least was the lesson learned in this iteration. What I learned is that I have been playing games far less than I want to. But yeah, you need to actually play games so that you can actually make games. Yeah, surprising. Especially if you are making a game in a genre that you aren't really that experienced in, then you really should research and play some games. And sadly, back then, I was a university student, physics degree, bachelor's physics degree, and I had to also improve my skill set in game programming and improving myself in the tool set so I can actually make the games that I want. So that was very brutal. And yeah, I just didn't have the time to properly, play games. But afterwards, I was reaching the end, and I did actually reach the end, and it's the 6th iteration of Amira, and it starts now. Amira in its final form. It was reborn in this form, and it's an action RPG, story-driven, Middle Eastern fantasy game that occasionally becomes a top-down or 2.5D game with reactive, easy-to-learn combat that is heavily influenced by Amira herself and the story that and the decisions that she makes in the story herself, where the monsters might become stronger or weaker based on whatever decisions she makes. Is she wearing long clothes? Then a certain monster will get stronger. Is she wearing the shorter dress which she has? Then other non-aggressive monsters may become more aggressive and attack her. So the play style also changes. So like luckily I made a lot of abilities and weapons in the previous iterations and they did not go to waste. Instead they give a deeper meaning now, where based on the way she's dressed she gains certain and different abilities that she can use, and this is the true and final form of Amira. So the final lesson learned for the day: be patient with yourself. No need to beat yourself up. As long as you keep improving yourself at whatever it is that you are doing, as long as you keep getting better than who you were yesterday, then that is all that matters. Be patient, be consistent, and simply relax. Now I want to say this is all that I have today in terms of Amira, and that if Amira interests you, then please add it to your wish list. Oh, actually, please do just add Amira to your wish list. But sadly, this devlog has taken far too long to make, that Amira is entering one more iteration actually. So we are entering even one more iteration. Like I entered this iteration as of July 2023. So I learned one key important lesson in this new iteration, and it is do not listen to player feedback. Now I know, wait one moment, I know this sounds very contradictory with things I said previously, but hear me out. Do not let the player's feedback shape your game. And when you take the feedback, you should be very wary which type of player is giving the feedback. In my specific case, I was gunning for the wrong audience. I was aiming for the wrong audience. So Amira, it has been in development since late 2019 and early 2020. And since then the game has gone through many iterations, as you saw. So throughout this time, I was sharing posts and development logs and small quick 1 minute, 2 minute videos across the media and all, and I gained a little bit of following. But here's the thing: most of the media that I was sharing, it was and the following that I gained was actually in the local Middle Eastern market, and the specific group of players that my posts ended up reaching were the players who are addicted to a certain type of game, like the FIFA games, the football games, third-person shooters, and Call of Duty. Now, to be fair, back then I did not know any better, so my game was slowly being mutated into a third-person game because I was listening to feedback from not my target audience, from a target audience that I reached by mistake, that I shouldn't have reached, that I should have known this is not the core target audience of my game, so I shouldn't have listened to the feedback. But that specific feedback, that is the feedback that turned the game to third person. But I didn't know any better. You saw, it was a long journey, and it's a learning process. You get better, you learn. Now, of course, that was still not so bad because the core of the game, which was the story, it did not change at all, and that's cool. But the problem is that I myself didn't play many third-person games aside from Nier and Drakengard. So that means I was not experienced with this type of gameplay, and then to top it off, a game in third person means that you have to spend a massive amount of money to get it to look high quality. And I mean, sure, you can grab some assets and models, but there will always be inconsistency between different asset packs as you build the game. And when things are in third person, the player is up really close to the view, and he can see these inconsistencies, and things would just look very bad. They would look good, but they would look bad at the same time, where it's in the uncanny valley. So the game, you would need to spend so much time, you would need to spend so much money to make sure the game leaves the uncanny valley. That's just the nature of third person games, because it's so easy for the players to spot these visual artifacts, these visual inconsistencies. When you have a rock model that is different, that is a lower quality than the other models, it just breaks the immersion really quickly, and that's just not acceptable. So this meant one thing: I would need to spend at least 4 more years developing the game, which is something that I do not want to do at all. And it also meant I needed to modify the gameplay more and more to keep matching this third person view. For example, in third person view, players are typically used to, for example, shooting a weapon while they are running. But for my case, that just didn't feel so good for my game, and I don't think there is a single weapon in my game where you can shoot and move at the same time. So that was it's just very different. You need very different specific kind of things, and you need higher quality animations and higher quality visuals and higher quality just everything that the player can see. And that's just not something that I can do unless I spend 4 more years working at it full time, and that's not something I can afford. Now, all of these decisions on my end were made simply because I listened to the wrong target audience. So the core lesson learned in this final iteration as of July 2023: find your target audience and listen to the feedback of the target audience for as long as that feedback obeys the core design pillars of your game. If this core design changes, if this feedback changes the core design of the game, then you don't need to get it. So for example, some people gave me the feedback that Amira should wear more let's say skimpy outfits where she has boob plates, armor, and that type of thing. But that's not who Amira is, and that's not within the core design. And of course there was also the opposite, where some people would actually send me messages and tell me that Amira needs to wear more conservative. Really wasn't who Amira is. This is who Amira is as a person, so I simply couldn't listen to that kind of feedback, and she stayed as she is for now. And of course, probably for the future. No, not for now. She will probably stay the same. Of course, if I can improve on the visuals of the model, then all the better. But we're speaking general design, giving her a boob plate or giving her a full niqab. She's neither of these two characters. She's not any of these two. So she is who she is, and that's how it will go. Thankfully, I realized this mistake of mine, and now that I have learned, I need to actually reach the specific kind of players that are interested in this type of game that I am making. So in short, take all the feedback that you receive with a grain of salt, because you are the game developer. It's your game, it's your vision. You have the core design pillars. So you should be aware of your goals, and you should make the game that you want and use the feedback to improve and guide the game to be the best version of itself. not to mutate the game into a different kind. So I guess the summary and conclusion of this iteration is that Amira went back to being a top-down game rather than a third-person game. This might sound like very bad news, but thankfully a lot of the things that I made while it was third person I can reuse while it is top down. Of course, there are certain elements that will be scrapped and a lot of time wasted, but at least I learned that at least I learned my lesson, and hopefully at least my plan forward is to finish Amira as soon, like within a year. Like I'll give myself a deadline of 1 year after I finish my master's degree in physics. From that point on, we will go forward with Amira, and I will develop it further, and this concludes my journey in game development, at least in the direction of my personal projects. Mainly Amira, which is my largest personal project. I had a few others that I made in game jams and all, but yeah. And my final words of the day. Please add Amira to your wish list. The Steam page is not up to date, nor does it represent the current state of the game. I will update it sometime in the future, but please add Amira to your wish list. It really helps me a lot. And small pieces of extra info that I would like to announce. So Amira will be coming to the Nintendo Switch and will also be coming to Xbox Series S, Series X. So these are the confirmed consoles for the time being, and yeah. Oh, and to the Epic Store as well, but the Epic Store page is not ready yet. But yeah, please. So that is all for today, and please add Amira to your wish list. And that is all. Have a nice day, everyone, and please leave in the comments what do you think, and did you find it helpful? What was the most helpful lesson that you have learned from my very long and messy journey?